Thank you so much, Nika. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you so much. It's the last workshop of the conference. How's it been? It's been... Everyone's enjoyed it. Thank you all so much for coming, especially since I know a lot of you traveled a very far way to be here. Just to think, to be in your seat today, you had to travel all the way from the door back there. In fact, actually, this morning when I left my room, this is what I look like. And then by the time I get back to my room tonight, this is what I'm going to look like. Friends, today I'm not actually going to be sharing with you Baha'i jokes. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's a real disappointment.
I'm leaving.
You're leaving? Someone lock the door back there, please. This gentleman wants to leave. Today I'm actually sharing with you what is a struggle. A struggle that I've been facing for a lot of my life, which is my love for comedy and my love for the teachings of Baha'u'llah, and how do they fit together? This is me looking very confused in the middle. Why is this a struggle? The plan today is first we're going to look at humor. After we look at humor, we're going to look at the Baha'i writings and what the Baha'i writings say about humor and about a few different things. It's going to be very interesting, I promise. And then when we finish with all that, we're going to look at my personal journey. Okay? Maybe when we finish all this, we're going to learn something, so let's hope we do. But before we begin, I put together an aim for my presentation. It is my sincere hope that through sharing my experience, you will leave this presentation with a deeper understanding of how the principles of the Baha'i faith can apply to comedy. And if that doesn't work, then I hope you have fun and get education. It's an eloquent description of what will happen today. So, without any further ado, let's go. Examples of humor. What does humor look like in the world around us?
Political satire.
Political satire is one example. Any other suggestions? Sarcasm? My face? Who said my face? Okay. Comedy. Let's look at what is the definition of comedy. Just so you know, I'm a professional. I have used the definition from the Oxford Dictionary and also used the upside down E that nobody knows how to pronounce. And it says comedy under it. Apparently that's how you pronounce it. Anyway, comedy is professional entertainment which consists of jokes and sketches intended to make an audience laugh. These people are what's known as, they're a special breed of animal, known as professional comedians. Has anybody seen any of these comedians? Raise your hand. Show of hands, please. Okay, one, two, a few. Does anyone have a favorite comedian? What did you say? Me? Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I'm his favorite comedian, everybody. So, why is this a struggle? Why have I been struggling with comedy in the Baha'i faith? Why? Because I saw this graph one time. This is a graph I saw in a book, and it compares a clean joke to a dirty joke. And it says that a clean joke's funny level is about there, like just somewhere like in the... I feel like every time I go to the projector, I get jet lag. It's like... A clean joke is like, and then a dirty joke is like... I don't want to say bad words. That's my problem, right? Because in the writings, we see that Baha'u'llah shares this quote with us. He says, "The tongue I've designed for the mention of me, defile it not with detraction." So I don't want to use bad language, and I'm striving for higher ideals, but then so much comedy is got these bad words in it, and how do I negotiate that space? And that's a challenge which you're faced with this in every field that you go into, and any area of professionalism is this struggle between your ideals and what you're striving for as a spiritual being, and then what you see around you so popularly. Let's look at some themes in popular comedy. So this is just off the top of my head, I was thinking about what I see on TV. Politics is a massive theme. Crude language, sex, racism, and anger. There's a lot of anger in popular comedy. There's a quote by Abdu'l-Baha and the Universal House of Justice, which says that while laughter should not be suppressed or frowned upon, it should not be indulged at the expense of the feelings of others. What one says or does in a humorous vein should not give rise to prejudice of any kind. You may recall Abdu'l-Baha's caution, beware lest ye offend the feelings of anyone or sadden the heart of any person. This makes it extremely difficult then when you think about the popular themes in comedy, such as politics, crude language, sex, racism, and anger. How are you not meant to offend people when you're angry? You can't. So here we have my challenge as an aspiring comedian. So then I thought, okay, maybe these things aren't what makes jokes funny. So I started reading books. I read books on humor, I read blogs, I watched comedy, I observed, and I started to find that the things that make things funny are things like the break of tension, shock, defamiliarization, expectation, and context. These things are not necessarily negative. These things are not necessarily bad. Then how come when we look around us in popular comedy, they can all be so misconstrued and used in such a negative way? Very, very interesting. With this in mind, I then turn to the Baha'i writings. Now, let me get this straight. There's not a lot of Baha'i writings on comedy. And I don't know why. But I reflected and I thought about this and I realized that because in the 1800s in Iran, there was a lot of stuff going on. And I don't think comedy was up there with hot issues or important things, philosophical discussions. So it looks like we have to turn to other places for our guidance. So what we're going to do is we're going to look through some of the Baha'i writings. So the next few slides are going to be a lot of writings, so nobody leave. Okay. Where can we look for writings on comedy? The example of Abdu'l-Baha, the master. Rectitude of conduct, utterance and language, spiritual identity, and guidance on the arts. Because I believe that comedy is both an art and it is a language. Therefore, if I truly believe that, I can look at arts, I can look at language, and I can start to have an idea of how I can conduct myself in that space. So, first, the example of the master. There's a great article online. It's an article put together by a man named Eric Ballinger, who discusses some of the traits of Abdu'l-Baha. And it said that Abdu'l-Baha was a very humorous man. He would often entertain his guests with jokes and often use comedy to make serious points. For example, if people seem self-important, he would use that comedy to sort of deflate that sense of self-importance. There's one story, the one very funny story of Abdu'l-Baha, where there was an American Baha'i who was visiting the Holy Land, and Abdu'l-Baha asked him to go pioneering to India. And the man didn't seem too enthusiastic about this, but he thought about it for a few days, and then when the final day came, Abdu'l-Baha said that he actually wanted to send him back to America. And the man said, but Abdu'l-Baha, I thought I was going to India. And Abdu'l-Baha said, well, so did Christopher Columbus. So that was what Abdu'l-Baha said. So I'll just take some water. Sorry, I need to hold water in my hand because I have one of these microphones. You see, last time I did this talk, I had a microphone in my hand, and so I knew what to do. But now I have both my hands free, and I like talking with my hands, and so I realized that this is actually a great opportunity to dance on stage. I was very nervous, thank you. Okay, so that brings me greatly into my next subject, which is dancing during the presentation. Tick. Brings me into my next topic, which is rectitude of conduct, how I conduct myself in situations. There's a very, very good quote which Nika actually quoted for the introduction of this talk, which is the one that starts, "Be generous in prosperity and thankful in adversity." And this quote, it lists many ways that we should conduct ourselves as Baha'is, or striving for a spiritual ideal. And it goes on to say, "Be fair in thy judgment and guarded in thy speech. Be unjust to no man and show all meekness to all men. Be as a lamp unto them that walk in darkness, a joy to the sorrowful, a sea for the thirsty, a haven for the distressed, an upholder and defender of the victim of oppression. Let integrity and uprightness distinguish all thine acts." I love this quote. Absolutely love it. Because it outlines exactly how we should behave. And so if you think back to all those things about comedy, the violence, the sex, the politics, the anger, those things have no place in our regular conduct and how we should conduct our lives. So then when we look at comedy and we look at the way that we want to express ourselves, we have to somewhat consider these guidances, how to be a lamp unto those that work in darkness. If I'm being racist, am I really being an upholder and defender of the victim of oppression? No. So this quote is one that I really draw from to see, okay, I'm doing this thing, I'm being comedic, but then am I doing A, B, C, and D? So, rectitude of conduct, love it. The next one I looked at was language, because like I said, I believe comedy is a language. It's a way to express yourself. For language, there's similar guidance. There's quotes that say, "Human utterance is an essence which aspireth to exert its influence and needeth moderation. As to its moderation, this has to be combined with tact and with wisdom, as prescribed in the Holy Scriptures and tablets. An enlightened man of wisdom must primarily speak with words as mild as milk. And the function of language is to portray the mysteries and secrets of human hearts." Language can portray mysteries and secrets. This is why we, as beings with souls, have been given language to investigate our reality and portray these mysteries of our hearts. Because we are spiritual beings. Spiritual identity, a chaste and holy life, its implications of modesty, purity, temperance, decency, clean-mindedness involve no less than the exercise of moderation in all that pertain to dress, language, amusements, and all artistic and literary avocations. A chaste and holy life includes the way we express ourselves in art. So now it's confirmed. Now it's 100% confirmed that we have to look at our art, for example, comedy, and we have to apply the teachings. There's no other way around it. Plus, we also have to be modest in the way we dress and amuse ourselves. Okay. Art. Some could say that what I just did there was art. Some of you might actually know dancers, and they would not agree. There's lots of guidance on arts. While there may not be that much guidance on comedy, there's lots of guidance on art. So if comedy is an art, and art is a comedy is an art, then we can look at arts for guidance. So, the Baha'i faith speaks very, very highly of arts. For example, the true worth of artists and craftsmen should be appreciated, for they advance the affairs of mankind. Artists advance the affairs of mankind. We were there, but I did some art, and now we're here. Advance the affairs of mankind. That dance I just did, advance the affairs of mankind. Okay? Drama is of the utmost importance. It has been a great educational power in the past, and it will be again. The theater. The stage will be the pulpit of the future. So the way I interpret that is that means that when I get on stage and I do a performance about something, I'm just so happy I can move around. When I get on stage and I do a performance and I'm talking about a topic which I'm very passionate about and I'm connecting with you, this could be the pulpit of the future. This is how it could change minds and change mentalities. Who watches The Daily Show with Trevor Noah? Like 3 of you, that's great. Trevor Noah, he's using comedy. It's an art. He's using a language of expression, and he's sharing ideas and thoughts that greatly affect the political climate of a specific region. And so in that way, you can slowly start to see that this is the way that the stage or arts can be used as the pulpit of the future. So that's enough of talking about the problem and what's going on and all that. Why am I talking about this? What do I even actually do? Well, my name is Jordan Raj. I work at the Townsend International Baha'i-inspired school in the Czech Republic, and I traveled that way to be here today. But before that, when I was in grade 8, I started making YouTube videos in my room. And a lot of my friends said, oh man, you've got so much time on your hands, what are you doing? I was making videos of like my foot holding a pen and like making a beat. It was really weird. And yeah, I posted them on YouTube. This is my YouTube channel. I did it for about 7 years, and then I started posting photos on Instagram, because Instagram seems to be all the rage with the young people nowadays. And I started to reflect on what my goal was. What is my goal as an artist, right? And I realized that it was very difficult for me to just go out there and compete with big comedians who were getting thousands of views on YouTube. They were swearing, they were talking about video games and all these things that I had no idea about. And I realized that I just wanted to make people happier. That's it, that was my goal. I wasn't giving, revolutionary ideas. And then I stumbled across this quote from Abdul Baha. And it said, when you meet a stranger, try to make their lives a little happier. This kindness will help them become better. And that really struck me, because I thought, okay, so I'm making these silly little videos on YouTube, and hopefully I'm making people smile. And if I can make people happy, then maybe I'll make their lives better, and then maybe somehow we could change the world. Yesterday the world was here, I did a silly dance, and now the world is here. So these are what the photos I post on Instagram now. This is a photo of me. I'm not actually in the photo on the left. That's just flowers. And then the one on the right is me just being silly. And people seem to like this. People seem to enjoy this, and so I kept doing it. This is a video I posted while I was at work one day. Actually, before I get to that, I took a photo here in Phoenix, actually. This is me meeting the local people. And here's a little video I will share with you, something I posted while I was at work one day. Do you feel a little bit better? So, after doing this for a while, I started to want to do something directly meaningful. I was like, okay, I'm doing all these funny videos, I'm making the world a little bit happier. I wonder if I could just apply this directly to the Baha'i faith somehow. How can I do it? And that's when I came across Baha'iBlog.net. Who here has heard of Baha'i Blog? You all should be raising your hands. For those of you who haven't, Baha'i Blog is the website responsible for selling the t-shirts outside the main auditorium in the evening. So they'll be there tonight. If you get a chance, you can get a World Citizen shirt, or a World Embracing Vision, or Created Noble. Those shirts could be yours. It's all a fundraiser. Baha'i Blog is a website that supports Baha'i-inspired media and celebrates Baha'i-inspired art. And so I approached Baha'i Blog, and through collaboration, I was able to create a 5-part video series, which was comedic. It was a comedy exploration of how we could use humor to express certain topics. And so here we got What's That Word? Who's heard of What's That Word? 1, 2, 3, 4. A couple of my family. Okay, good. So I'm going to play the first episode of What's That Word? It's about exploring difficult words from the Baha'i writings. So enjoy the first episode of What's That Word?
Hello, friends. Have you ever been reading the writings when suddenly this happens?
An epoch unsurpassed in its sublimity, its
Yeah. Those situations can be kind of awkward.
That is why we have this show here. It's going to be amazing. We're going to love it. We're going to learn so much.
Sorry. Welcome to the first episode of What's That Word, where we take tricky and wonderful words and we explain them. Today we'll be talking about 95 words which you may encounter in the Baha'i writings. Just kidding, we'll do 5. Not everything has to be 95. Number 1, immemorial. Immemorial describes something which originates in the distant past or is so old. I suppose it comes from the word memorial or memory. Something being so old we can't even remember where it came from. Veiled in my immemorial being. Number 2, invoke. To invoke is to call on something in prayer. Not like this. For example, we can invoke God, invoke the most great name, or invoke blessings. Número 3. Sí, hablar español. Vivified. Vivified is the past tense of the word vivify, which is to enliven something or make it more intense. Okay. I suppose it comes from the word vivid, which means very sharp or clear. They sometimes put it on TV boxes to sell you a television. We can be vivified through the potency of the teachings of God, or vivified by the Holy Spirit. Number 4. The last 2 words can be found on page 223 of God Passes By. I think. Espouse. I suppose espouse could just be the Persian way of saying spouse. I'm kidding, I'm not going to put that in. Can I? Espouse is to adopt, take possession, or accept something. I suppose here it means accepting the cause of God. Espouse its cause. Espoused his cause. Numero Panj. I'm half Persian. Cynosure. Pronounced like sigh. Nah. Sure. It's a noun which means a thing, but it can also be a person. It's a thing which attracts the center of admiration or attention. I'm humble. Shoki Effendi refers to God's newborn faith as the cynosure of all past dispensations. Wow, that's really hard to say. Well, that's all for this episode of What's That Word? Hopefully next time you come across these words, you'll know what they mean and be able to say them. Until next time, feel free to head over to the Baha'i Blog YouTube channel, check out other episodes, and don't forget to hit subscribe. Khadafiz. I'm half Persian.
So What's That Word was a 5-part series aimed at junior youth. And judging by that response, it looks like most of you still think you're junior youth. So we made this 5-part series, and the response we got, especially from junior youth, was great. Junior youth loved it, kids loved it, the parents were happy that the kids had something to do, it was brilliant. But not every review was positive. Like with anything, some people were like, oh, this is great, but I didn't feel comfortable because the professional word is shenanigans, right? The shenanigans were so close to the Baha'i writings. It was a quote, and then I was shenaniganing, and it was just, sometimes people didn't feel like that was right. So I decided to do what any good scientist would do. Look at this, it's going to be amazing. And I decided to conduct conclusive, conducive research. Look, Mom, look, Dad, Dr. Hastam. I love this coat. I borrowed this from someone. I think we're over that now. So I used Instagram, and I basically posted this photo. So this is a photo I took about 4 months ago in front of the Capitol Hill building, which is a major government building of this country. And I took this photo, and I was like, this is going to be hilarious. Dad, take the camera. Dad, take my photo. Dad's like, son, you should have been a doctor. Click. And he took this photo, and I posted it on Instagram because I realized that when I looked at the photo, it actually looked really like, it was my, I don't know how to say this politely. It was my bottom, and it was facing the government building, right? And that's not the image that I wanted to give off. Like, I was thinking about all the ways that I want to conduct myself. I was like, no, this is not who I am. People are going to find this offensive. So I posted on Instagram, on my story, and I said, survey, is this offensive? 32 humans said, nah, it's pretty funny. And I was like, excellent, people love it. But then 17 were like, yeah, it's going to get you deported. Stop. Take it down right now. So I took it down from Instagram, and I replaced it with this photo. And this is a photo of me looking beautiful, or as they say in Farsi, kheli khosh mazeh. For those of you who don't speak Farsi, that was the wrong word. I said I look very tasty. This one, I was much more comfortable with this photo. I was like, yeah, that's me. I look cute. I look beautiful. And I'm in the front of the government building. Another exploration I did. So, story time. I went to university in Australia. I was there for 3 years. I was studying at the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology. I was studying media. In my free time, I was doing stand-up comedy in dingy little bars. So I would go on a weeknight, rock up to these random little gigs where there'd be like 3 people in a row, and I'm meant to make them laugh, and they were all pretty much terrible, especially in this one situation over here. This is a photo of me. This was like some dodgy bar that had a really like edgy reputation. I was sitting on the ground on the stage, and I had the microphone, and this is how I started my act, right? I walked on stage, and I sat down like this for like a solid like 30 seconds, and I was like, I'm sitting down because I want people to know I'm not good at stand-up comedy. Worst joke I ever made. Never did it again. Did it twice again. And I would do these different comedy routines. And I just noticed, I was like, I'm not getting as many laughs as my peers. My peers are getting so many more laughs. And so one night, I went out and I was like, that is it. Tonight is my night. I'm going to make it. I'm going to go on that stage and I'm going to say bad words. And so I did. I rocked up, that's me on the left, wearing my clown shoes. They were like one size too big for me. And I went on stage and I told some jokes, and then at the end I had my main joke prepared, and I was going to say a bad word at the end of it. And I said the bad word, and nobody laughed. To this day, probably the moment of my comedy trying out that I'm least proud of. But I'm also the most grateful that it happened. Because I'm like, I swore. I made a dirty joke. Why wasn't it funny? It's meant to be off the chart. Why is it? Why? Bleh. And I realized that the reason it was not funny was because it wasn't coming from me. I wasn't being who I wanted to be. I was trying to be someone else. I was trying to be what I thought would be funny. And so I explored this idea, and I was like, what? Like, why? What am I trying to figure out here? And I realized that comedy really breaks down to 2 things. There was something that was written in all the comedy books I read, was that authenticity is really important. Being authentic and being true to yourself. So, let's look at authenticity for a second. Remember all those things that I listed about what makes something funny? The break of tension, the shock, the defamiliarization, the expectation, and the context. All those things only work if the person sharing them is being authentic. So all these things are built on the foundation of authenticity. And I looked at this, and I made this graph for the presentation, and my mind went, oh my goodness, I've seen this somewhere before. Truthfulness is the foundation of all human virtues. And I realized that truthfulness was not only about not telling a lie. It was about being true to yourself, about being true to who you are, being the most authentic version of yourself that you can be. And I thought about, who am I trying to be? Am I trying to be a spiritual being? Yes. How do I do that authentically? I follow the guidance and I follow what I believe in. And only if I do that and I express that to my art am I going to come across as authentic and funny. The next is culture. In my culture, what is authentic? What makes sense to people? In the US, if I was to post a photo of me in front of the Capitol Hill building with my pushed to the building, a lot of people would be really offended. But if I post that same photo in somewhere in, let's say, Madagascar, They might be like, what is this building? And it's a funny guy, and it's great, I love this photo. Culture is very important, which is why there's a guidance from the House of Justice, which talks about literary art and artistic work. And it says, literary work, whether a play or otherwise, has to be reviewed by the National Spiritual Assembly of the country which it is published in. Why is this? Because the National Spiritual Assembly knows what cultural norms are prevalent in a country. For example, clapping. In some places, clapping can be considered offensive if you do it in the middle of a prayer, whereas in other cultures, clapping is a part of worship, it's a part of dancing, it's a part of singing. That's the way they praise. So you cannot make a blanket statement to say, oh, this culture applies to the whole world, and everyone's going to love this, everyone's going to laugh at this. No. So it brought us back to the idea of being authentic and being in the correct cultural context. Then I was like, hang on, remember these guys, comedians I showed at the beginning? Every single one of them is a professional. They do their job brilliantly. They make people laugh all over the world. But why? Because whatever culture they're operating in, they know exactly what type of jokes to make. They're being very authentic to their own reality. Trevor Noah on The Daily Show, he's talking to an American audience, and he's talking about what he truly believes is right. So I realized that with all those things, those political humor, racism, sex, anger, all those things, they don't make sense to me. But I can't push my standards on everybody else. All I can do is just be excellent in my own art for myself. I have to apply what I call the moral standards of the Baha'i faith. And as long as I believe in the Baha'i faith, I have to uphold those standards. This quote from the Universal House of Justice really captures this for me. It says that Baha'i artists are free to apply their talents to whatever subject is of interest to them. However, it is hoped that they will exercise a leadership role in restoring to a materialistic society an appreciation of reverence as a vital element in achievement of true liberty and abiding happiness. Apply their talents to whatever subject of interest is of interest to them. And so there is no guidance to say, you do this or you do this. But what is hoped is that you remember your spiritual nature and you try to apply excellence to every situation and every expression that you make. So that's been my journey. Thank you all so much for listening.